محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرفهم أجمعين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إن الحسين مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة. صلوات. اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Dear brothers and sisters, mu'mineen and mu'minat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yet another night, yet another opportunity for us to take another meaningful step forward in our journey towards Karbala. A journey from darkness to light, a journey from constriction to freedom. Like every other journey, this journey has its special adab, and we've been touching upon those briefly every night. One of the most important spiritual aspects of this journey, one of the most important adab of this journey is something we are all familiar with. But I'd like to emphasize it anyway because of its importance. And that is, one of the most important adab of this journey is for us to grieve during this journey, to feel sorrowful during this journey. It has been narrated from our 8th Imam, Imam al-Riza alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alayhi. When he speaks of his own holy and blessed father, the 7th Imam, he says, Kana abi, idha dakhala shahru Muharram, when the holy month of Muharram would commence, would begin, la yura dahikan, he would never be seen laughing. Hatta tamdiya ashratu ayyamin minhu, till the passage of the first 10 days of this month, la yura dahikan. And since we are here today continuing a tradition established by the Ma'asumin alayhimus salam themselves, this tradition of mourning and commemoration of the events of Karbala in the month of Muharram, it behoves us and is becoming of us that we should try and model our daily life on this pattern. La yura dahikan. And this is something that we try to do. Often we see parents telling their children to be careful. Of course, being pleasant and smiling is one thing. Laughing is quite another thing. I'd like to emphasize this further, that the emphasis here is on grieving. Grieving is fundamentally an action performed by the heart. Yes, we can go through the motions of mourning, for example, by attending gatherings such as this, and that is important, very important. But what is most important is the condition of the heart during this time. And all these physical activities, this wearing of black, this turning up for the majalis, this being alert about not laughing, these are all simply gateways and stepping stones to the real purpose, which is achieving that sense of grief and sorrow in our hearts. And that's important. It has consequences. It has been narrated from our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alim. It has been narrated from him where he says, Nafasul mahmumilana al-mughtammi li dhulmina tasbihun. He says that every breath of a person who is afflicted by our grief, who is sorrowful on account of the oppression that we have been subjected to, every breath of such a person, obviously this pertains to his internal condition, not simply someone who's going through the physical motions of participating in mourning ceremonies. Every breath of such a person, al-mahmum lana, al-muhtammi lidhulmina, tasbihun, it carries the thawab and the status of tasbih, as if we are reciting tasbih, each and every breath. وَهَمَّهُ لِأَمْرِنَا إِبَادَةً. And he who is concerned about our mission, his concern carries the status of ibadat, of prayer. So these are important consequences. These are important consequences. Dear brothers and sisters, our discussion and our talk here these nights, night after night, is about the journey, as I mentioned, from darkness to light, from constriction to freedom, but also from debasement to honor, from humiliation to dignity. And on this important journey, and it is the only journey that matters to us, on this important journey, we need guidance. We need guidance so that we can make the right choice to set off on this journey. And at every twist and turn and roadblock and speed breaker in this journey, we stay on the right path. We don't fall off the arc of salvation halfway through the journey, in the middle of the ocean. We need guidance again to set off on the journey and to stay on the right path during this journey. And the system of guidance provided to us by Allah Azza wa Jal is the system of imamat. The system of imamat is the system, the foundational and fundamental system of guidance for mankind on this all-important journey. The Imam doesn't restrict himself. I'm just going over a few points till we get to our discussion for today. The Imam doesn't restrict himself to simply telling us what is right and telling us what is wrong and proving the truth through powerful arguments. He does that, of course. He does that, but he doesn't stop at that. The Imam leads by example. The Imam leads by sacrifice. The Imam calls us to follow him in everything that he has done. And anything he asks us to do, he has already done that several degrees greater than we have been asked to do. And therefore, those who answer his call and say labbaik to this call, they develop each and every faculty. They develop intellectually, they develop emotionally, they develop spiritually, they develop socially. Each and every human faculty is developed in the followers who say labbaik. And they are consumed by this passionate love and desire to sacrifice themselves and everything in love and obedience to the Imam. This is part of their development. The world may think that this is some kind of foolish extremism, but it would be extremism if the object of this love and passion were not deserving of it. It would be foolishness if the Imam were not the epitome of perfection. But when the Imam is perfect and invites us to perfection, where is the extremism in wanting to sacrifice everything for perfection? It makes perfect sense to do so. And that is why, dear brothers and sisters, the system of Imamat has often been described as the soul of Islam. As the soul of Islam. Ruhul Islam. And why is that? It's pretty obvious for us. What is the relationship of the soul to the body? We all know that very well. As long as the body has a soul associated with it, or as is commonly said, there is a soul inside the body, as long as that is the case, the body has life. It is animated. The body moves. If it is a thinking being, it thinks and reflects. And the moment the soul is taken out of this body, what happens? There is decomposition and there is decay. Imamat is the soul of Islam. It is what animates and gives life to Islam. And we are blessed and fortunate that we have been allowed to come closer to Imamat. Being Shia, being associated with the Maktab of Ahl Bayt, we have been allowed to come closer to it than many others have. However, none of us can claim we have reached a level of true understanding and appreciation of Imamat as yet. It is a journey of understanding and getting closer to Imamat. This remarkable system of guidance called Imamat has a few remarkable characteristics. One of the characteristics that we looked at is that it is always active. It is always on, running. No sleep mode, no hibernation mode. The system is always active, no matter how difficult the circumstances may be. The Imam or the system of Imamat doesn't wait for an invitation to come and guide. When they will invite me, that's when I will go and guide them. No, that's not the way Imamat works. It seeks to guide whether people are interested in seeking guidance or not. We've seen this in the mirror of Karbala. We can see it very clearly in the Karbala paradigm. At a time when from the eastern border of the Muslim lands that touched the Indian subcontinent to the western borders that could be found in northern Africa, in every single city, town and village, they were cursing Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib from the pulpits. And when they were willing to accept Yazid as their ruler, it is at that time that Imamat says, إِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. Was anybody in that ummah interested in seeking guidance from Imam Hussain at that time? No. Nobody was interested at that time. And yet Imam Hussain sets out on his mission at this point in time to guide this misguided ummah. It's always working. It's always in active and running mode, offering guidance to humanity. Of course, if someone is seeking guidance, he will receive guidance in greater measure and of a higher level. But it's not the case that guidance will not be offered to those who do not seek it. It will be offered to everyone. And dear brothers and sisters, since these gatherings here are essentially a continuation of the mission of Karbala, a continuation of Talab al-Islah fi ummati jaddi, But we need to reflect upon this, that are these gatherings able to do that? Of course, Islah has to begin with us, and that is our priority. But is it that we have been neglectful of spreading the message to others? There is a vast sea of humanity everywhere we are. They have no idea about Karbala. They have no idea about Hussein. Does this behove us? Is it becoming of us as followers of Karbala that in our city, in our country, we should have such a situation? It's something to reflect upon, something to think upon. Sometimes when I travel to a few places, people complain that there are among us small groups, individuals who behave in unpleasant ways, who say things, write things, which drive away those who belong to other communities, offend them. There are a few places where this happens. And it is a problem. We cannot deny that this is a problem. And this obviously has to do with a weakness of understanding related to the mission of Karbala. And as that weakness is replaced by strength, and there is an increase in ma'rifat of what imamat, what Imam Hussein seek to do, this problem will inshallah be diminished, reduced and solved. But there is a larger problem here, which I feel isn't addressed adequately. If there are a small number of people among us who behave in unpleasant ways leading to this situation where others feel offended and are driven away, there is probably a much bigger number among us who is neglectful of the fact that we have to spread this message to others. Yes, we are not behaving in obnoxious ways that drive people away, but it's not a priority for us to draw people towards ourselves. Isn't that a problem in itself? If we claim to be followers of Imam Hussein and we are aware of what his mission was. So that's one remarkable feature of Imamate. It's always active, always on, offering guidance, whether it's asked for or not. Secondly, another remarkable feature, Imamate is always able to find a way. Is always able to find a way. There are no dead ends in this path. There are no dead ends. Circumstances change. Imamate changes its strategies. Once again, we can see that, and we have seen that in the mirror of Karbala. Up until Yazid becomes the new usurping Khalifa, Imamate adopts a strategy of avoidance. It wants to avoid direct confrontation and friction with the usurping power, with the Khilafat, and wants to focus on building human resources and talent among the Shia. But once the situation changes, the Imam decides that it is time to change strategy as well. And from avoidance, it shifts into open defiance and confrontation, which climaxes in the events of Ashura. So we see it is able to find different ways. And this is not just limited to Karbala and Imam Hussein. We can see that in the life of earlier Imams and later Imams. I've mentioned earlier that our holy messenger Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Though he is not usually addressed and called an Imam, we know he was an Imam at his time. And we see the differences in strategies in his life. The way he is guiding the community and addressing humanity those years in Makkah, those 13 years, followed by what he does when he's in Medina, there's so much of a difference. So much of a difference. What Imam Ali alayhi salam does before he becomes Khalifa and after he becomes Khalifa, there is so much of a difference. Imam Hassan is heading out for war to fight Muawiyah. He's gathering his army. Things change. He enters into a peace agreement. Situation changes. The principles and the higher aims and goals stay the same, but the strategies of guidance change as situations change. So that's another notable feature that we've looked at. Yet another notable feature that I'd like to introduce today, dear brothers and sisters, is this. Apart from being always in running mode, apart from finding different paths and ways, always finding a way forward, being infinitely flexible, there is yet another remarkable feature of Imamat. And that, dear brothers and sisters, is this. Imamat is always moving ahead, moving from success to success, surmounting any difficulty that comes its way, victory to victory. In essence, Imamat, the system of Imamat, is undefeatable. Undefeatable. Now, I've made this claim, but I'm sure in your mind there are questions. What are you saying, Maulana? What are you saying? Look at our situation now. The position of the Shia in so many parts of the world is so weak. We are called deviants, extremists, rawafid. Such lies and canards are spread about us. Some of them too unpleasant and embarrassing to recount here from the mimbar. And this isn't just the case now. Let's go back in history. The system of Imamat was most formally established in Ghadir Khum, with the announcement of Man Kuntu Mawla. We are all familiar with that. But it took less than 3 months for those who had pledged allegiance in Ghadir Khum to gang up together, band together, and decide that somebody else is going to be the ruler. Less than 3 months. And we are saying that the system of Imamat is undefeatable. 3 months after its establishment, this is what happens to Imamat. And then what happens after that? What happens with Imam Hassan? What happens with Imam Hussain, and which is what we are commemorating these days? What happens with the Imams after Imam Hussain? Each and every Imam harassed, martyred. The Shia in each and every Imam's time persecuted, slaughtered. And we are saying the system of Imamat is undefeatable. And then what happens? Things get so difficult that our Imam moves into the realm of Ghaibat. Ghaibat began more than 1100 years ago. And for the last 1100 years, more than 1100 years, we Shia do not have direct access to the center and pulsating, beating heart of the system of Imamat. And we are saying the system of Imamat is undefeatable? Yes, we are saying that. Yes, we are making that claim, and we will stick and stay on that claim. Dear brothers and sisters, all these problems that I've mentioned, all of them are true. We see it, we feel it. The persecution, the lies, the allegations, the trouble, the assassinations and the killings of Shia. It hasn't been so long that in a certain part of the world there were terrorist groups, ISIS for example, especially targeting the Shia more than, they were of course targeting many others as well, but we had a special hatred for us. This is true, but dear brothers and sisters, I'd just like us to keep one fact in mind, one point in mind. Dear brothers and sisters, we should not confuse setbacks with defeat. We should not confuse setbacks with defeat. If we do, and if we succumb to this confusion, we will not be able to analyze our situation properly. This system is undefeatable. Let me just give you an example from Karbala and move on to the next point. When Hussain ibn Ali gathered in Karbala, it is said that there were 72 companions who were ready to fight with him. The famous figure is 72. 72 who were willing to sacrifice everything that they had for Hussein ibn Ali. And all of them were martyred on that day. A setback? Yes, a setback. No doubt about it. But what is the situation today? There are millions of people all over the world, inshallah, including some in this very hall and room, who are willing to say this with truthfulness that if I were in Karbala, I would give my life for Hussein ibn Ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. From 72, the figure has risen from 72 to millions. Just give me a moment, I will ask them to move ahead. From 72, the figure has moved to millions all over the world. In Karbala, what was the situation? There was this small little camp on one side, Hussein ibn Ali, and there were thousands on the other side. Today, those of you who've been to Karbala, especially during the time of Arba'in, what is the situation now? On the days leading up to Arba'in, when we are trying to approach the shrine of Hussein ibn Ali, 1400 years after the event, we have to wait for several kilometers. There is a gap of several kilometers between us and the shrine because the crowds are packed so thick that we cannot get to the shrine. Is there still any doubt about the system of Imamat being undefeatable? In its most weakest moment, the Imam slaughtered all by himself. The ladies and children of his house enslaved, so to speak. That moment has now become a great strength for the Shia all over the world. Do we need any other proof of this system being undefeatable? Setbacks, yes, but defeat? Absolutely not. Undefeatable. Undefeatable. And this is just about the Shia. Every single Muslim movement which deserves the name of Muslim movement. Of course, things like the ISIS, etc., these are caricatures. They don't count in this argument. Muslim movements, Shia, Sunni, any other sect, who have an element of genuineness in them, all of them have one aim, dear brothers and sisters. What is their aim? All of them say, we seek Islah in the Ummah. The same slogan that Hussein ibn Ali raised 1400 years ago, you can go to every Muslim movement and group that deserves this name, that is deserving of this name, and they will say, we seek Islah. We seek Islah. Isn't this a victory? Isn't this a sign of being undefeatable? And of course, their understanding of Islam varies from group to group. And there are many errors in that. And that's fine. Inshallah, those errors will be addressed and will diminish over the period of time. Every group, every Muslim leader wishes to be associated with Hussein ibn Ali and Karbala. Not just the Shia, the others as well. The love for Hussein is common in the entire Ummah. Of course, once again, let me emphasize a few of these groups that don't deserve the name of Muslim groups and Muslim movements, they are out. The overwhelming majority of the Ummah loves Hussein ibn Ali and would be proud to be associated with Hussein ibn Ali. Undefeatable, dear brothers and sisters. So the system of Imamat, the system of guidance is truly remarkable, truly remarkable. Always running, always flexible, finding a way forward. And now we see undefeatable as well. Undefeatable as well. Which raises a question in our minds, or should raise a question in our minds. How is it that this system has acquired these remarkable features and qualities? How is it that it has these unique qualities? These unique qualities. One way to answer this question is simply to say that Allah has willed it. And that is the correct answer. That is the correct answer. Certainly Allah has willed it. But our intellect is curious. It seeks to understand the channels through which Allah's will flows in this case. And let me just share a couple of points in this regard. Please support me with a salawat. Bar Muhammad wa al Imam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please recite a salawat and move ahead. Allahumma salli ala wa ali Muhammad. Please move further ahead. There's a lot of empty space here to my right. If especially the younger, the youth and the kids can please stand up and walk ahead, it would be very nice. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa. So the question before us, the question that engages our intellect, dear brothers and sisters, is this. How is it that this system of guidance, the system of imamat, the system of hidayat, how is it able to be so successful, so remarkable, essentially undefeatable? How is it? Well, part of the answer lies in the fact that it is a system. Part of the answer lies in the fact that it is a system. It is not tied to any one single individual. When the Holy Messenger passes away, you have Imam Ali alayhi salam. When he is assassinated, the system of Imamat is led by Imam Hassan, and so on and so forth. Till we get to a point where it is led by our Imam, the Hujjat of our time. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. So this system of successors and successors who have been identified in advance, we have a hadith both in Shia books of hadith and in the books of other sects, which mention 12 imams by name. So this identification in advance, this ismat, this infallibility of the leaders, certainly this plays a role. And in the period of ghaibat, because the system of imamat, at least over the last 1400 years, has primarily been a system that's worked with ghaibat. Let's keep that in mind. Its undefeatability and successes have primarily been achieved in a state of ghaibat. So it makes it even more remarkable. And that's happened because even in the age of ghaibat, we have the scholars, we have the maraje, we have the fuqaha. And inshallah, in a subsequent lecture, perhaps we'll elaborate on this point. So one element is this element of successorship, of high quality, in some case infallible ma'soom, in the form of our aimma, and in the case of fallible, yet highly trained, and very advanced scholars leading the system of imamat at different levels and stages. So that's part of the answer. But there is another part. Remember, we are trying to answer this question, why is it that this system has been so remarkably successful, undefeatable in fact, moves from success to success? Yes, setbacks are there. Some big setbacks may be there, but there's no defeat. It's never crushed. It's never snuffed out. Why is it so? And here I'd like to introduce another point in this regard, another aspect of the system of imamat, which will help us answer this important question. Dear brothers and sisters, I belong to India. And India is a large country. Everyone here has some kind of familiarity. Many of you are from India yourself. India acquired independence in the year 1947. Many of you are aware of this. How did it acquire independence? Was it that one day the Indians just asked for independence, it was given to them? No, that's not how it happened. Was it that the British themselves decided to give independence to India? No, that's not how it happened. What happened in India, as many of you know, is that there was an independence movement. And this movement struggled for decades till finally India achieved independence in the year 1947. Now, when we speak of a movement, we can see a few essential features in any movement, and we will see that in the Indian independence movement as well. One essential feature of every movement is that it has a lofty goal and aim. A lofty goal. In the case of the Indian independence movement, it was political independence from the British. They wanted the British to get out, and they managed to kick them out. So that was the lofty goal, political independence from British rule. So that's the first feature, the aim, the lofty goal, aim and purpose. The second important feature, there was a charismatic, transformational leader. In the case of the Indian independence movement, it is a personality known as Gandhi. All of you have heard his name. The third important feature of any movement is that the movement spoke to a large audience. It addressed a large section of society. In the case of the Indian independence movement, the movement addressed all Indians. As you know, India is a terribly, incredibly diverse country in terms of languages, cultures, religions, customs, regions. It spoke to all of them and invited them to participate in this movement, despite all the differences that existed among them. And because these three features existed, it was a movement. And being a movement, it was successful. Dear brothers and sisters, movements have a very special role to play. When something is limited to being a formal organization alone, let's assume that instead of the Indian independence movement, there was one single association of, say, 500 people seeking independence in India. India would probably still be under British rule. What happens with a movement is that all the faculties, abilities of an entire population is brought into play, is engaged, is activated. Human beings have immense potential. And movements allow a platform for this potential to come into play and have a multiplier effect leading to great success. So this is about movements. Now, why are we talking about the Indian independence movement here? The next point will make it clear. Let's see what the system of Imamat has to offer in this regard. Let's see what it has to offer in this regard. We spoke of three important elements. We spoke of a lofty goal. We spoke of a charismatic, effective leader. And we spoke of a message that's addressed to a very wide audience and seeks to draw in many people. So let's see what the system of Imamat has to say in this regard. When we look at the aims and goals of the system of Imamat, we can describe it in different terms. Let me just pick one term from our ahadith, where it is said about our Imam, the Imam of this age, Hazrat Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari. Allahumma salli ala. His goal has been narrated in this hadith, where it is said, Yamla'ul arda qistan wa adla. Kama muliyat zulman wa jawra. Upon his reappearance, our Imam, he will fill the entire earth with justice, just as it was full of injustice. Look at the goal. Look at the enormity of this goal. Filling the all of the earth with justice. It's not about this country. The Indian independence movement was just about India. And this is about the entire world. The Indian independence movement sought political freedom from the British. This seeks justice in its complete and mutlaq form. Injustice isn't just limited to colonialism and British ruling over Indians. There can be injustice between two brothers and there is frequently. This mission seeks to eradicate injustice in all its forms. So look at the enormity of this aim. Can any other movement dare to make such a claim in terms of its aims? Look at the leader. The Indian independence movement believes it is very lucky to have a leader like Gandhi, and perhaps it was very lucky. But look at the leader of this movement. The leader of our movement, whether it be in our times or before Ghaibat, is a ma'soom, an infallible personality. There is no chance of him making any error, forgetting something, slip of the tongue, losing self-control, getting carried away by emotions, getting fooled by the enemies of this movement. Nothing of this sort can happen. Perfect, infallible human being leading this movement. Can any other movement ever claim that we have such a leader? And when it comes to the aims and purposes of this movement, India was a very large country. It sought independence for India, the Indian independence movement. It was a large goal. It was a very bold goal, no doubt about that. But what do we see? What do we see? Who does this movement address? The Indian independence movement addressed all sorts of Indians. But at the end of the day, it addressed just Indians. Who does the system of Imamat address? It addresses each and every single human being on the face of this earth. Whether he is interested in seeking guidance or not. Those who are interested in seeking guidance will be addressed in a special way. Those who are not interested in seeking guidance will still be addressed and catered to in some other way. Can any other movement make a claim even half as bold as this one in terms of the scale of the audience? So, dear brothers and sisters, when we seek to understand why this system of Imamat is so remarkably successful, undefeatable, part of the answer lies in it being a movement, and not just any movement. Being a movement itself gives any system immense strength. If it moves from being a formal organization to being a popular movement, it gives it immense strength. So Imamat being a movement is strong, but it is not just a strong movement. It is in fact the strongest movement humanity has ever witnessed. Ever witnessed. Dear brothers and sisters, can anybody point out any other movement which has survived for 1400 years? Rack your brains. Search on the internet. Speak to experts about this. Any movement which has managed to survive for 1400 years, and not just survive, grow from strength to strength, success to success, despite the fact that all its leaders, except for the last Hujjat, have been assassinated, all of them have been martyred. Some of them very brutally. Its followers have been hunted down and slaughtered. If it were to simply exist, it would be a miracle, but it doesn't just exist. It goes from strength to strength. If you don't believe me, Arba'in is coming in just 6 or 7 weeks' time. Have a look at where this movement is today. This is just one manifestation of the power of this movement. This movement now has influence in governments. This movement has influence in several movements and groups across many countries in the world today. So not only is Imamat a movement, it is in fact the world's most successful and powerful movement by far, by leaps and bounds. And therefore it is no surprise, dear brothers and sisters, that this movement is able to attract such a diverse set of people. We've just spoken about how it addresses every human being, every single human being, including those who aren't even interested in seeking guidance from it. And therefore, it is no surprise that when we go back to Karbala, we see that this movement at that time, in the Karbala paradigm, in the year 61 Hijri, is able to attract a personality such as Zuhair. You've heard about this. Zuhair, one of the famous martyrs of Karbala, he was at that time, till a few days before Ashura, he was what perhaps we would call today perhaps Sunni. Of course, in those days there was no Sunni Shia sect. And why was that? Because it is written about him that he was Uthmaniul Madhab. He believed that the third Khalifa, he was persecuted, he was unjustly killed. And naturally he believed that in the sequence of leaders, Imam Ali alayhi salam was the fourth leader of the Muslim community, which is one of the hallmark signs of the Sunni worldview even today. Our brothers in the Ahl Sunnat, this is what they believe even today. So this movement of Imamat is able to draw in Zuhair despite the beliefs that he held till just a few days prior to this. Well, at least Zuhair was a Muslim. He was a Muslim. He was a brother in faith. But what will you say about Wahab al-Kalbi? It is narrated about him that he and his family, they were Christian. And it is upon coming in contact with Hussein ibn Ali on the path to Kufa that they become Muslim. They become a part of this movement. So we shouldn't be surprised that this movement is able to attract such diverse personalities. We can see it in Karbala and we can see it till today. And inshallah, we will see it among us, around us, inshallah. While this movement attracted people from other communities because of its strength, of course, its pillars of strength were those who were part of this movement right from childhood. They were the pillars of this. They were part of this movement and acting upon the requirements of this movement right from childhood. It is said that when Hazrat Habib ibn al-Mudahir, he was at home in Kufa. He has been living now in Kufa for 20 years approximately. He is originally from Medina. That's where he has grown up. In fact, a part of his childhood was spent playing with Imam Hussein and with the other children of Bani Hashim. But when Imam Ali alayhi salam established his capital in Kufa, like many other Shia, he moved to Kufa. And after the assassination of Imam Ali and the events that happened after that, he chose to stay on in Kufa. So it's now been about 20 years that he's been living in Kufa. He's an old man, right about the same age as Imam Hussein. He's at home. Obviously, he's worried because he was there when Hazrat Muslim bin Aqil came. He saw all the events that happened. He participated in those events in seeking support and allegiance for Muslim. He saw what happened with Muslim. He was not able to prevent it because of the treacherous conditions there. So he knows that these are important and momentous times. Perhaps he was worried. He was at home when there is a knock on the door. He calls out, "Who is it?" And the reply comes, "Ana Baridul Hussein." I am the messenger of Hussein. Habib runs to the door, receives this messenger, receives the letter that he is carrying, opens the letter and reads what Hussein ibn Ali has said to him, has sent for him. Imam Hussein has written to him, Min al-Hussein ibn Ali ila al-Rajul al-Faqih Habib ibn al-Muzahir. From Hussein ibn Ali to the Faqih whose name is Hussein, whose name is Ibn Mazahir, Habib ibn Mazahir. And then it goes on to say, O Habib, you know our position in relation to the Holy Messenger. You know our stature. Do not hesitate to sacrifice yourself for us. That's it. That's all the letter says. Habib kisses this letter, places upon his eyes, and gets ready to leave for Karbala. And he sets off for Karbala. It is narrated that when he was approaching the camp, Hussein's camp in Karbala, there was commotion in the tents. Who is this person who is coming? A lone rider? Who is it? What we've seen up till now is army after army coming from Kufa to join the army that already exists here. Who is this? There is confusion, there is apprehension, there is commotion. It is said that Hazrat Zainab asks, what is this noise from outside the tents? Why are people making this commotion? And she receives word, somebody is coming. A few minutes later, perhaps, sometime later, she sends another message. Who is it? Who has come? Is it our friend or is it an enemy who has joined? And the message comes to her, Dear Bibi Zainab, it is your brother's childhood friend, Habib. I am sure Hazrat Zainab smiled at this. I'm sure she smiled at it. Habib is seated with Imam Hussein in his tent, in the tent in which he receives guests and visitors. He's seated there speaking to Imam Hussein. And a messenger comes, maybe it was one of the children of Bani Hashim, and says that I have a message. I have a message for Habib. Politely interrupts the conversation. Imam Hussein tells this messenger, go ahead, what is your message? My message is from Lady Zainab. And it is addressed to Hazrat Habib. What is the message? Lady Zainab sends her special salam and salutations to Habib. Habib hears this and he strikes his face in grief and he says, Oh my master Hussein, is this what it has come to? Is this how lonely you are? Is this how desperate the situation is? That instead of slaves such as me respectfully sending their salutations to the Lady Zainab, she sends salutation to a slave such as me. Is this how desperate things have become? It is now the day of Ashura. Habib sets off for battle, bravely fights the enemy. Some say that he slaughtered up to 80 of these soldiers, this old man, despite his age, despite his hunger and thirst. But then the inevitable happens. As he is falling off the horse onto the hot sands of Karbala, he calls out just like every other martyr has, Oh my master Hussein, please accept my final salutations. He falls upon the ground. Imam Hussein alayhi salam comes by him, places his head on his blessed lap. He still has life in him. It's the death, it's the throes of death. He's consoling him as he is dying, and he says, Anta rajulun fadil, taqra'ul Quran fi laylatin wahida. Oh Habib, you are a special person. You used to be able to recite the entire Quran in one single night. Look at what is happening to you. He feels sorrow and grief, but I'm sure Habib is not sorrowful. Habib has reached the pinnacle of success. He has sacrificed himself for his master, for this movement. A few days later, in Kufa, the prisoners of Karbala are being taken through the streets and marketplace of Kufa. There are several soldiers who are holding spears in their hands. And atop each and every spear is the head of one of the martyrs of Karbala. Atop one of these spears, naturally, is the head of Habib. It has been narrated that the soldier who was carrying this spear with Habib's head begins to notice after some time that there is a young child who's walking around with him. When he goes to the market, this kid is with him. When he goes to Ibn Ziyad's palace to collect the reward from Ibn Ziyad, the reward from Yazid will follow later in Damishq. To collect the reward from Ibn Ziyad, this kid is with him. Everywhere he goes, this kid seems to be hovering around him, following him around. So he asks this child, what is the matter? Why are you hanging around? So he says, this head that is atop your spear, this head is the head of my father Habib. It is the head of my father Habib. He says, please give this head back to me so I can bury it. Of course, he doesn't give it back to him. And then it has been narrated that when this child grew up and became a young man, he sought out this particular soldier and whoever was responsible for killing his father, challenged him to a duel and killed him. Killed him. And it was said, this is what young men do. But then I will ask all of us to send our salutations to our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. He is in the prime of his youth. It's the head of his father atop this spear, the head of his uncles on those spears, his brothers on other spears, taken from city to city, marketplace to marketplace, castle to castle. This young man, he knows he has young blood in him. His blood is gushing through his veins. He seeks revenge, but he is now the leader of this movement. He understands that self-control is required and revenge has to be put off for another day. سَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Yes.
Thank you, Sheikh. That concludes our English majlis for tonight. So those of you who are